All right, it looks like we have critical mass. I will turn the meeting over to Councilmember Kinnear.
Thank you, Council President. Welcome, everybody, to Public Safety meeting. This is, of course, the second in a month because we have next week as our spring break. And if for any reason you see me all of a sudden go off air, we have a lot of wind up here and a lot of big trees. That's never a good combination. So somebody can jump in, Councilmember Cathcart. If I disappear and you see me under a tree, jump in and finish the meeting. We're going to start with approval of minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, thank you. We are going to start off with Sergeant Sparing, a brief overview of canines and what's happened the last 4 weeks since we've seen you last. Just give us a brief one and we can ask questions if we have any.
Will do. Thank you for having me again. So March for 2021, we've had 84 deployments, 27 people located, and we did have one contact. So that's a 3.7% bite ratio. Our year to date is 265 deployments, 91 people located, and 3 contacts. And so that's right around the same, 3.3% bite ratio. I know I talked quite a bit about staying on top of stats and kind of comparing any anomalies and things like that. So I just did a quick same time frame, first part of the year until the 29th of March, but for 2020. So we had 2 more deployments. We had 14 less captures. We had the same number of contacts, 3, and our ratio at that point in time was 3.8%. So things are on par and steady as she goes. The fine for the month of March goes to Zeus this time around, who we had probable cause for 2 counts of burglary on a domestic violence suspect. Searching the house, we're unable to locate him. Zeus alerted on a wall. So our alerts when they can't see anybody or contact anybody is sitting and barking like crazy. And Zeus was barking at the wall in the basement, which made officers think that he had lost his mind temporarily. They actually pulled back a dresser that was pushed up against the wall. That dresser was hiding a sheet of plywood on a small hole. They were able to pull the plywood away and see that wall actually extended in about 3 feet. And were able to then verbally challenge the suspect, who gave up with no force whatsoever. They would have completely been unable to locate him without the dog. So that's all I have for you this month. I appreciate the time, and we'll take any questions.
Any questions for Sergeant Sparing? But that's remarkable. See, it makes me glad that I have a dog, although I don't think she can do that. But that is truly remarkable. Appreciate the update.
All right, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. We have special guests today, and we have Craig Madsen. I saw you. Where did you go? There you are, who was our goat herd. And we have community school students. It looks like some teachers and advisors. They are going to be giving us an update on research that they've done about the GOAT project and how useful it is and all the things that they've found out. We have allowed 15 minutes for this presentation plus questions. So students, see if you can keep within a time limit so that council members can ask questions. So I'll turn it over to Ryan. Are you the person that's going to head it off? I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes. This is one of the first times I'm using this mic, so bear with me. Thank you so much for having the community school here. We really are just going to leave it up to the students to do most of the talking. That's what they're here for. And so I just want to say thank you. And Char, are you ready?
Yes. Hold on. Hi, I'm Char, and the group I'm with is from the community school. The other students today are Leah, Jordan, and David, and the teachers present are Sarah, Ryan, and Mary Lee. We also have Craig Madsen from Healing Hooves. The community school is a project-based option high school that focuses mainly on helping our community through meaningful community connections. We earn our high school credits by participating in projects that integrate subjects for authentic learning and impacts the world around us. Our school is unique in how we build community within and outside our school. We collaborate with experts in the community, develop real-world products, see feedback, revise our work, and then take action. For this project, freshmen and sophomores worked on the project that we called Promote the Goat. Jordan will tell us more about this project.
Hey, Jordan, are you ready?
He's muted.
Is Jordan able to hear you, Ryan?
I think he is. He might be having some mic issues. He's worked really hard for his section here, so I was hoping he'd be able to go. Jordan, can you give me a thumbs up that you can hear us?
Doesn't sound like it.
Jordan? Oh,
We can come back to him.
yeah, we might have to.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you for waiting. I was just having computer problems.
Okay. Okay, you're up.
All right. The driving question of our Promote the Goat project was, how do you promote the use of goats as a fire mitigation technique to the Spokane City Council and neighborhood councils? We worked with Jacob Bird, Grant and Grant Jones from the Spokane Parks Department, Craig Madison from Healing Hooves, Spokane Fire Chief Brian Schaefer, and also Angel Spell from Spokane Urban Forestry. There were two groups that worked on this project. The first group found parks in the city that could be featured and could be future sites for the goats. Students learned about our city and the districts that are represented on the council, and also the neighborhood councils. Each small group of students proposed future sites with reasons for the goats would be useful there. The second group took information from the first group and sent emails to the neighborhood councils to get feedback about continuing the wildfire mitigation program. As a follow-up, some students presented at neighborhood council meetings. David and Nia will share their experiences from their neighborhood council contacts.
So on February 9th, I presented the city's wildfire mitigation program, as well as our Promote the Goat project, to the North Indian Trail Neighborhood Council. They had a positive reaction to our presentation, but they had a few questions. Since Meadow Glen Park was going to be a destination for this wildfire mitigation program, in the coming spring, they wanted to know exactly when the goats were coming, when they would find out, how the goats were going to be kept in check, and how they could involve the community in the project. They want to use this as a promotional opportunity to raise awareness for the current work being done to turn Meadow Glen land into a community park. The general consensus was that the community members were excited for the goats to show up at the park.
One of the parks that was chosen for possible future consideration was Drumheller Springs Park. This park is in District 3. When we sent an email to the neighborhood council, we got a response that the Upper Columbia United Tribes is the caretaker for this park and land. The council reached out to the UCUT, and in their response, they indicated that they are interested in having the goats treat the park and that there are quite a few factors to consider. The UCUT and Mark Gauthier would like to be included in any future planning that might include fire mitigation with the goats at Drumheller Springs Park.
We are planning a climate science project for the upcoming fourth quarter. This will involve a field stem investigation at Meadow Glen Park, where the goats will be reducing wildfire fuel sources. We plan on going to the sites before and after the goats to measure the rate of the vegetative reduction. The measurements will be shared with Craig Matson, the owner of the goats, Fire Chief Brian Schaefer, as well as other concerned groups such as the City Council. Our staff will also share the learning outcomes with the Pacific Education Institute. There is a bright future for the use of goats as a management tool in Spokane. Neighborhood councils have expressed a lot of interest in making it an event that can help build a sense of community. Having goats come to your neighborhood is exciting for many urban dwellers, but you also want to make sure that everyone in your neighborhood knows that they are coming and understands why the goats are being used. Communication is critical for its success. As students at TCS, we are constantly working as collaborators in projects. We realized that in order to make this project work, many officials from various departments had to collaborate as well. The GOAT program is a shining example to the entire community that the government can find innovative ways to solve our complex problems. Please consider heavily all that we have discussed when you have conversations about the future of the Wildlife Mitigation Program. Thank you.
I'd also like to add, too, that one, thank you, students, for providing us all the information. And these students have worked really hard, well past the project. We're moving into other projects, and these students have stuck to it. It really showed a lot of agency. So, students, thank you so much. We'd love to open it up for any Q&A.
Questions, Karen Stratton? Go ahead.
I just have a couple comments. First, thank you for joining us. I did want to say that if any council members have not had an opportunity to visit the community school, you're missing out. I got to spend almost a day there, and I was so impressed. And the energy and the students were, I still remember the day, so that tells you something positive. The other thing is, thank you for reaching out to Audubon Downriver. We got those emails, and it was nice to see everything come together, so thank you for that. And the only other comment I have is David Goldblum. You need to look at a career in radio. You have a radio voice. I just want to tell you that. I was listening to you, and I don't know if Councilmember Mumm or Councilmember Kinnear, who both have those backgrounds, were aware of that. But yeah, you've got a great voice for radio, so keep it up. And thanks again, students. I appreciated this.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Brian Schaefer, Chief Schaefer, please, go ahead.
Just a huge thanks. I'll echo what Councilmember Stratton said. It's been a pleasure, and it's been an honor to work with the school. Ryan, you've got a great program, great group of people, and thanks for letting us into your world.
Anybody else? I will say thank you, a big thank you. I know that some of these research projects can be difficult. It's a lot more fun when you're working with animals, and I'm really jealous. I wish I could have done that when I was in high school, but nothing was going to burn down at that time in California. It's burning now, I guess. So keep up the good work, and I really, really appreciate you all. And yes, I concur. David, actually not radio, just go right into TV. it's a lot better. So thank you all, and we're going to move on to our next agenda item, which is ambulance transport agreement discussion, and that is Chief Schaefer.
Well, good afternoon, Public Safety Committee. This is just an opportunity to allow time for discussion based on some of your feedback or comments from the briefing paper that we have had. I'm open to that at this point if anybody wants to kick that off.
Who wants to go first? Anybody? Somebody?
It's pretty straightforward this year. You know, obviously, we're just planning on recommending an extension for from administration to the legislative branch on this contract to continue the existing service levels and same philosophies that we've had in the past. That will fill out, as we normally do, the final 5-year extension to this agreement and hopefully keep service levels consistent and stable as we come out of this pandemic.
Chief Schaefer, has there been any discussion about the firefighters actually doing transport, or is that no longer a discussion item for them?
I think it's a discussion item every couple of years when this contract comes up. There's not currently a legal pathway for us to take on that enterprise, and all the assessments that we've done in the past have proved that it's an extremely expensive and cost prohibitive enterprise for us to get into that business.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, Chief Schaefer, thank you.
Thank you.
We have a cold case unit presentation with Major McNabb. So we can't hear you. You're not on mute, but you're not being heard. So Hannah Lee, can you unmute him maybe? No.
He's unmuted from our end.
So does anybody else? I don't hear him.
I think
does anybody
the
else
problem is his microphone isn't working on his computer, I think, is the problem.
Okay.
I'm trying to channel Kate Burke. I don't know if she agrees with me.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yay, yes.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Just turn your speaker off. Mine is off. Okay, just making sure you can still hear me. Thumbs up. Somebody. Great. All right, so we've been getting a lot of questions lately about the cold case unit and what it would take to set that up. So I've done some research, some preliminary looking into where we are at now and what it would take to get us to a cold case unit. So just some current statistics. Nationwide, the average clearance rate on a homicide is around 61%. Spokane is at 96%. You can see over the past 10 years that we've done a pretty good job of solving the majority of our homicides. If you look at the chart on the right, you'll see our unsolved cases dating back to the 1950s. We have 113 unsolved homicides. And I'm going to give you a caveat to that particular statistic because as we go back through these files, especially some of the ones that are 20, 30 years old, it's possible that that number could go down or up just slightly. But it's pretty accurate as it is. Missing persons, we have around 15, and unidentified remains, we have 5. So these are the unsolved cases from 1978 to 2009. And I would thought that I would see a pattern after DNA was implemented around the early 90s, and then CODIS, which is the database for DNA profiles, was entered around, stood up around the early 2000s. I thought I would see a definite drop in the unsolved cases, but it doesn't seem to be the case with 7 unsolved in 2002. But we have seen a pretty good drop over the past almost 20 years. So the National Institute of Justice did a pretty good study about how to set up a cold case unit. And they define a cold case as a violent crime, missing persons, or unidentified person that has remained unsolved for at least 3 years and has the potential to be solved through newly acquired information or advanced technologies to analyze evidence. So if we set up a cold case unit, the unit responsibilities would be unsolved homicides, unsolved sexual assaults, missing persons, and unidentified human remains. Unit structure, it's very important that it's a standalone unit that's not constantly distracted by higher priority new cases, that they can focus and be uninterrupted on their work. We would want 1 sergeant and 1 detective. The National Institute for Justice actually recommends 2 investigators and 1 supervisor, but I'm trying to find a happy medium with that. There is a potential, and some other departments are using retired detectives as part of their part-time seasonal or special commissions to come in and work on some of these old cases. In some cases, it is a returning detective working on a case that they had not been able to finish. Right now, our part-time seasonals that we use for the academy background investigations, we pay them $25 an hour for a maximum 940 hours a year, which equals $23,500 for an annual salary. That is something that we're going to work with our labor unions on because that could potentially be a skimming issue. The annual operating budget would be around $50,000 per year for DNA testing and travel. That's based on 4 cases per year that would require familial DNA testing, which currently is quite expensive. Just to keep in perspective, though, one of the most successful cold case units in the country solved 19 cases in 9 years, so approximately 2 per year. So why now? We have improved forensic DNA testing, genealogical analysis, and fingerprint identification has increased the solvability for cold cases dramatically. The longer these cases age, the more difficult they are to solve. DNA alone does not solve these cases. Witness testimony, suspect confessions, physical and circumstantial evidence is still required for a successful prosecution. The FBI is actually recommending that we resubmit all fingerprints prior to 1993 just because of the increased improvements in technology. And cold case units have had great success with solving the homicide, rape cases, but they are challenging and they are expensive. So some final thoughts. Cold case units provide justice for victims, closure for family and the community, and strengthen local confidence in the police department. Identifying and prosecuting of violent offenders increases public safety. What I mean by that is if we identify a killer or another violent criminal that's on the street that we don't know about yet, that it possibly is offending in other cases, solving a cold case homicide could take a violent offender off the street. And this would align SPD with the national trend to establish cold case unit. Currently, there are 18% of agencies with over 100 officers have a cold case unit. There are some staffing challenges. Major crimes and special victims unit is facing a great deal of fatigue, especially our major crimes unit with having 21 homicides last year. Backfilling those requirements when we move when we move an experienced investigator out of our major crimes unit and put them in a cold case unit, we'd have to then replace them with a newer detective in that spot. And as we go through the cycle of hiring and training new officers, it takes a long time to catch up and get somebody trained up to be able to walk into and fill that position successfully. So this isn't something that we could, even if we had the funding, it would be very difficult to plug it in right now and make it functional. It would probably take 1 or 2 years to get those positions up to the point where we could actually fill them. And obviously we have other community demands on our police department. So this is one thing that we would love to do. It's just a matter of getting it to function, getting the positions filled and the funding secured. And that is the end of the presentation, so I will take any questions.
Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, just thank you very much for the presentation, and really hopeful that we can find a path to get this accomplished. My question is, would it be possible to put out some sort of a job listing for essentially experienced detectives and other cold case units to try and find somebody who's already experienced that could apply and that we could hire to do this work?
That's a great, excuse me. That's a great question. Trying to fix the echo here. I think that something that we need to work out with our guild. They've already brought up questions about using a part-time seasonal for this type of work. So that's something definitely we're going to have to do. I guess going through logically the steps to get this set up, how would we then, do we secure funding first and then look at trying to get through the labor issues of working with our bargaining units to see what's going to be acceptable for them?
Councilmember Mom.
Hi, thanks. Thank you. This was an excellent presentation, and I appreciate you putting it together at the request that was made just a short few weeks ago. One of the things that I'm thinking of when we're looking at the economic cost is, what the cost is to the community of potential more crimes if someone isn't caught. And I think you kind of addressed that a little bit in your slides. But, Mr. Duncan just died, and the damage that he caused to so many families, especially the children, I can't even imagine how we would feel if we didn't do everything we possibly can to try to catch the people that are still out there. The 96% clearance rate is unbelievable. There should be magazine articles about that. That's fantastic. But I also note that cities our size have these, and 20% is probably growing. So I guess my question is, do you have any idea how many folks, when they do clear these cases, are already in custody and not causing problems, and how many are at large? Are we really looking at most of these people already are sitting in jail, or do we catch people that aren't?
That's a great question. I'll say that from just anecdotal experience, knowledge, that it's kind of a mixed bag. I know that with our sergeant and detective who are working on our unsolved sexual assault cases, that they are finding some offenders that are in jail already, and some that are have been in jail or maybe have moved to another state. So I don't have any statistic for you exactly, but right now I'm finding that it's varied.
Councilmember Stratt.
So, Major, thank you so much for this presentation. This is something that I support, and I'm so glad to see that somebody's taking it and kind of starting to move it forward a bit. Just a couple of things. I particularly like the concept of using retired detectives. If we can make that work, that would be great. I know, being on the COPS board, we have volunteers, and some of those are retired detectives that are looking to stay involved and to, keep active. The other thing that I've thought about all along in this process is if there's a way for us, once we get moving in this, to utilize the cop shops. We have so many cop shops. They have space. They have offices. They have people in those offices working. So that's just a suggestion, and I'm sure that you've thought about that as well. but there may be that we can combine and partner with COPS to make this happen. And I really appreciate your work. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Council President, did you have a question?
Yes. So I wanted to just follow up on your question, which was, do we find the funding first or we do the labor negotiations first? And I think the funding is probably there. So I would start with the labor negotiations, and then that would inform us. You know, I'm particularly intrigued with hiring one supervisor and then having a crew of these volunteers and letting that person manage those people. I don't know, you probably weren't at the meetings where we had former officers volunteer, actually just to even work for free, but I agree we should pay them. So, but I think if we could figure out the labor issues, then that would help us tailor the funding for it. So if you could work on that and get back to us, we could go to the next step. And I, again, like many others, support moving forward with this for all the reasons everyone's already listed. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Council President.
Any other council members? I want to thank you too, Major McNabb. It would be a tremendous benefit to the community, and we have a person in our own office that would benefit from this. I don't know if you all saw her interview in Page Q, I guess it was. It was fabulous, and it right to the heart of the matter. There are families that have no answers, no closure, and as you said, Major McNabb, there may be people still out there roaming around who will offend again and create that sorrow and sadness for the next family. So it sounds like you have most of the council behind this effort, and I would urge you to move forward with finding some solution to the guild issue going forward. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. You're very welcome.
So the next item is e-bikes with Sergeant Hamilton, and this is an SBO discussion.
Are you guys able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for the invite. Let me see if I can share this. I apologize. I think that I accidentally shared it a little bit ago there. Are you guys able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you. Just to introduce myself, I'm Sergeant Craig Hamilton. I work out of the downtown precinct and supervise the swing shift crew. With the recent addition of 4 additional officers assigned to the downtown core, with kind of going with the emphasis of have a stronger presence on bikes and foot patrol, I started looking into how to actually do it more efficiently. And I spoke with LAPD and kind of got turned on to, well, I started looking at e-bikes, which led me to speaking with LAPD. They're kind of the leaders in the industry. They partnered with Bolt Bikes, and I got in touch with Bolt Bikes USA. They're a worldwide manufacturer of bicycles. And anyway, they were kind enough to send up 2 demo e-bikes. We tested them for 2 years. I was trying to get this. We tested them for 2 years. There we go. That you guys able to see that?
We can see that, yes. Now we're back to the first.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it to switch.
There we go.
There we go. All right. Got it figured out here. Okay, just a little bit of a delay. So anyway, we tested them for 2 months, and we found that they were absolutely a game changer in patrolling downtown, the core of downtown. And it increased we just found the e-bikes were an absolute multiplier over just a conventional bike that, guys are using for patrol. And we do have some regular bikes downtown. They are fairly aged, and just trying to figure out a way to move, to the next step. And what we found was we were able to put in more miles per day, reference versus a conventional bike, which made us way more visible to the public, the community leaders downtown, the business owners of the downtown area, and then again the criminal element. I mean, the word was out that we were downtown out on bikes, and it was great on both the business owners and the criminal element. I mean, we were very, very visible. One thing we found is that we were able to cover a more area, obviously, than you could on foot, which again just was increased that efficiency. Another thing with the e-bikes over a conventional bike, we were able to arrive to scenes ready to perform the duties that needed to be performed. We weren't out of breath and exhausted. Matter of fact, the very first day we took them out, we were kind of riding around we were out kind of the central part of Riverfront Park, and some officers needed some help, and with an emergency situation about Pacific and Division. I was on a conventional bike. The two officers were riding the e-bikes, and they were able to get there much faster than me. They arrived to the scene probably about 2 minutes before I was able to get there. And then when I got there, of course, I was out of breath. And downtown is not flat. Everything kind of slopes down toward the city. Well, in the car, you don't notice it. On foot, you don't really notice it, but you're not really going that far. And then but as soon as you get on a regular bike, it's drastically noticed. They also allow us to patrol the downtown core area. We were able to patrol Riverfront Park, portions of the Centennial Trail. Now we can easily patrol the University District, and then also other neighboring areas such as Peaceful Valley, Kimball Yards, Lower South Hill, areas that aren't going to be as accessible on a regular bike. I mean, that's just a fact. Going down into Peaceful Valley, inevitably, as soon as you get down in the fringes of the downtown core or areas of patrol, a hot call comes out, and then to have to ride back out of Peaceful Valley on a regular bike. I mean, to be able to respond in a timely manner is just not an option. And then we did expand 4 blocks east, the downtown precinct's area of coverage is now over to Sherman, which includes more of the University District in that footbridge. We've also found that we can respond quicker than obviously on a regular bike, but even in addition to patrol cars, the downtown has so many one-way streets that if we see something, typically we'll have to go a couple more blocks to get all the way turned back around to where we can, address what, even if it's something we see in an alley. Whereas we're finding on the bikes, and especially the e-bikes, everything is just right there. We can quickly, turn around or hop on the sidewalk and respond. And so the crowded areas, the traffic, absolute game changer. We found that we can actually move with the flow of traffic. So the e-bikes that we're looking at will go 20 miles an hour. And so we can actually ride with the flow of traffic, which increases the safety as well. We also found that we can get to places behind barriers, certain areas of Centennial Trail. It just doesn't get patrolled in a car. One thing that was the biggest surprise to me is how much more approachable officers are on bikes. For whatever reason it is, I don't know, but somehow it just breaks a barrier. I would say we're even more approachable than when we're out on foot. And I think, you know, Spokane is a big biking community, and usually it brings up a lot of discussion and whatnot. But everything from, you know, riding down the street, and we've got business owners waving at us, to just talking to people on the side of the street, guys on skateboards in the park. And it's, for whatever reason, the bikes break that barrier. It's been absolutely amazing to see. Obviously, they're substantially more cost-effective over patrol cars as far as patrolling the downtown area. And one thing in comparing the e-bikes to a regular bike, we found that we can patrol downtown the same as you could for the most part. I mean, obviously we can't transport, but for the most part, we can actually patrol downtown on the e-bikes. We can respond to calls, and a lot of times we're getting there faster than the guys in patrol cars. The obvious, you know, the fuel savings, less traffic congestion, wear and tear on the patrol cars that we currently have, and with the price of the e-bikes and whatnot, we can. I mean, it's so much more efficient that we can outfit 5 e-bikes for half the price of one patrol SUV, which is a huge money savings. And, you know, the obvious, it's forging, you know, the Spokane Police Department with city administrators and trying to figure out a way to continue to electrify our fleet. Let's see here. So, we're aware that vehicle emissions are a large contributor to air pollution, and the e-bikes themselves are considered a zero-emission vehicle and run on clean energy. The e-bikes that we tested, they plug into just a regular 110 outlet. Guys are having lunch or they're, you know, off shift for the day. We just plug them in, and they charge up. Super simple to charge up that way, so they don't need any special infrastructure or anything like that. So again, this moving to e-bikes, it supports state law to transition vehicles to electric biofuel. With the requested bikes, it helps put Spokane closer where we need to be as a city as far as moving forward in that route. And if we were able to get 5 bikes, you know, with the number of officers that we have working each day from that 11 to, you know, 9 o'clock hour, we'd be able to replace 4 to 5 patrol cars per day with e-bikes. And we would still need cars out there for transport and, you know, to respond with additional equipment. But on average, we'd have 4 to 5 guys out there a day on e-bikes. And then just a side benefit, you know, the guys that live somewhat close, they could commute to work with those. So just a little bit about both bikes. The bikes we were looking at, there was actually a collaboration with LAPD. They helped design the bikes. They're police specific. They've been using them for 3 years. They've found them to be extremely reliable. They're currently replacing their whole 500 bike fleet with e-bikes. The sergeant down there just sent me up a picture. They just had another shipment of 60 e-bikes delivered, and they were getting them all outfitted. Just to emphasize, these are electric pedal-assisted bikes only. So they are just like a regular pedal bike. There's no throttle on them. There's no thumb throttle or twist throttle. You have to be pedaling for that bike to apply the torque. And they top out at 28 miles an hour. So that's kind of where we're going, our current needs. We're proposing 5 e-bikes properly equipped with emergency lights, front and rear, and the price breakdown, the MSRP on the bikes are $5,500 per bike. The light setup's about $500. So we're looking about $6,000 per bike. We've got 5 of those at $30,000 to what we're proposing. And then that is it for the presentation. If you guys have any questions, there's also this link. I'm more than happy to send this presentation out to City Council if you guys would like. There's this YouTube video is from LA, and it's about 13 minutes long, but he gives a great presentation on just the benefits of the e-bikes and what they've experienced. And after testing them for 2 months, we have seen that exact same thing. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Council President, I know you have a question.
I was just going to say this seems to check all the boxes, so I'm super excited by it, particularly how well it, I think, will work in the downtown environment, as you described, more responsive even than vehicles, and we can always call someone to transport someone once someone's been apprehended. So, great presentation. You have my full support.
Councilmember Moore.
Yeah, these seem real affordable. Again, it's just everything looks great for doing this. I'm just wondering if, sometimes these might need to be in the shop or out of service. Do you need just a spare? Like, do you want to go for 7, or does that 6 cover it, do you think?
5.
Excuse me.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest with you. I'll take as many as you give us. I did fully staffed or fully outfitted for the swing shift crew would be 9 bikes. So we have 8 swing shift officers, and me as a supervisor would be 9 bikes. And
so what about 10, and then you'd have a spare in case one went down?
That would be absolutely amazing, and that would do wonders. Again, so for 10 bikes, that's the price of one SUV, and we're getting 10 for that, so 10 to 1. I will say, as far as maintenance, so there's nothing proprietary about the bikes for the most part. There's a few parts, the motor itself, but we have in-house mechanics, so we're able to do all the mechanical work on them ourselves in-house. And everything is up to the motor itself. The motors have a 3-year warranty on them, but the Bike Hub, which we've got right downtown on West First Avenue, is a Bosch motor dealership, and so they can provide any of the maintenance for the motor itself, which is huge. And so everything's just right there.
So I'll work with Council President and our Finance Chair, Council Member Wilkerson, to see what that might look like to fund 9 or 10. Do you think that would save us any money?
You mean for bulk, in other words?
Yeah. Well, no, more because they would be using other things, or because we're more efficient doing this.
Oh, yeah.
I will say as well, I was trying to get back onto the regular screen. I will say as well, they will give a price reduction for 10 plus bikes as well. So I'm talking, the price of the bike itself would be just under $4,300.
There you go. A piece for one right there. That's great. We'll keep working on it. Thank you.
Councilmember Cathcart, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess my question is, and also I agree. I mean, I think this is a very reasonable and a very logical thing to invest in. So it makes a ton of sense. And I also, I really want to see us expanding our neighborhood policing efforts across the city. And so I think these would work wonders in other parts of our community as well. My one question, though, is there any sort of policy or anything internally that you guys discuss in terms of just making sure that officers aren't necessarily just zooming by the public, that they are making sure that they're interacting and engaging and having those friendly encounters? That's my one concern with with bikes like this that might move real quick, is it's just easy to kind of speed by and not necessarily engage. So I'm just curious about how that might just continue forward in the way we're doing it.
Yeah, as far as an actual policy, I can't say that we have one, but we have not experienced anything of that sort. Matter of fact, when we're out on the bikes, again, it's so much different than being in a car. When you're in a car, for example, we were just at a stoplight, and it was dark out, and some guy pulled up next to us that was heading eastbound on First, and we were just at a stoplight just waiting, and pulled up next to us and advised us of a fire that someone was trying to keep themselves warm and up next to a building. I guarantee we wouldn't have been flagged down otherwise. We've just riding around like the mall and all that kind of stuff. Again, for whatever reason, it's totally different than when you're patrolling in a car. You know, it does bring back that community-oriented policing. And I mean, I know that's a coined phrase, but this is like the real deal. And the guys that are down here are fully invested in that, and trying to, go forward with that. Matter of fact, sometimes you can't even get very far because you end up just talking to everybody, which is great. That's what I want the guys out there doing. I want the guys totally visible. I want the guys here for so families can come down and shop downtown. I want the business owners, I want them to look outside, and I want them to see their Spokane Police Department out there so everybody feels safe. Since the weather's been getting nicer, it's awesome seeing people out there in Riverfront Park. Truly, that is the goal. I mean, getting goosebumps just talking about it. But that's the goal. We want downtown to revitalize. We want it to come back to life. And so I guess I could say I'm not concerned about that. I have not seen that portion.
Well, and thank you for making that a priority to make downtown safer, stronger, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Chief Schaefer, did you?
The only thing I just want to say thank you for the work that you've done. I was a recipient of a call for assistance the other day on 3rd with a person that was experiencing a mental health crisis and was in the middle of traffic and was close to getting hit a number of different times. In fact, I was just talking to the council president on the phone when all this was going on. I had 4 officers quietly come up and safely help this person. And there is a big difference from a perspective when you have officers on a bike that are a little bit more open and vulnerable dealing with the public than 5 squad cars. And I could see it. I could see that in the interaction. They were CIT trained. They handled the situation, but there was no tension. Removing that car from the situation, I think, was really an important part to that experience that I had. So thanks for what you're doing, and I think from our perspective, it's got palpable results.
Thank you, Chief. Can I say one comment to that, and then I'll let you guys go?
Sure, go ahead.
So we talked about your incident at our roll call, and the issue is now we don't have those e-bikes to test anymore, and so they were on regular pedal bikes. So initially the call came out, I think you were on East 3rd, correct?
Yes, sir.
Up by the Goodwill. Well, initially it came out as West 3rd. So they were heading west on 3rd and going quite a ways, and then the direction got changed to East 3rd, and that's all uphill. And again, in a car, you don't notice, but on a bike, and then when you're responding, especially, to help the fire department but, whatever, all of a sudden, so 3 blocks one way on a normal bike is one thing, but then when you're trying to, I guess what I'm trying to say is the e-bikes are an absolute game changer, and they responded to you on a regular bike, but had gone the wrong direction and then had to go back uphill. And
I was tired for him, but very appreciative.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it sounds like you asked for 5, but we're going to explore 10. So it's Christmas for you. Thank you so much for the presentation. Really appreciate it, and I now want to get an e-bike because they look so cool. So
they are an absolute game changer. Once you try riding one, you will never. I would say you'll never go back.
That's what I'm afraid of. Yeah.
I know. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And Councilmember Mum, you have the next two items along with Chief Schaefer. Do you want to go ahead and just get it started for us?
Yeah, I mean, he's done all the hard work. I just want to say that discussions with the chief, really, we had a good discussion, and he really went out there saying, what can we do for the community, for the fire department? They want to help. And, you know, so many of our firefighters were stricken by COVID and then couldn't get the shot, but they still want to give shots. So they've got outlined several opportunities here, and it is mostly dependent on the vaccine itself, but I'll let the chief explain.
No explanation actually needed. I just wanted to put something that I could share that kind of explained the thought process and the bigger picture with the influx or lack of influx of vaccine. We had a meeting this morning with the council president as well, and kind of got some feedback on our internal focus to try to encourage our own folks to seek the vaccine when it's available as well. So we're going to continue doing that in a positive way. So I appreciate the question, and just know that we're engaged with the Spokane Regional Health, and we're in lockstep with them.
I just want to mention, I think when the information came out that just a little over half of our firefighters had received it, I think maybe some folks might have perceived that, well, they don't want it. And that wasn't necessarily the case. They had to wait because they had COVID. So I just wanted to clear that up, that most of our firefighters are paramedics and are very interested in public health.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because that's where our minds go, especially a consumer of the media. You always go to the worst case scenario. The reality, like we discussed with Green this morning, was a lot of our people have other avenues of receiving their vaccine that we're not a part of. So while they may not have went through the Vax Clinic, our Vax Clinic, they went to their own healthcare provider and got it locally, or they were out of the area on vacation but got it. So I think we've got a little bit more penetration than what was reported, but we reported transparently what we knew about. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions about this? Councilmember Mum, did you want to add anything?
Well, just that I want to queue up the next thing, which is so exciting, which is the briefing paper about what can be done for the vaccination outreach.
Okay.
Your letter.
Right. Do you want me to go into any more explanation than really what I did with the? Or do you want me to go through, like, our plan is a multiple-step plan that
I would just mention each tier.
Okay, well, give me a second. Let me pull it up. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
When I was goofing around here with my...
So the first one was just sort of explaining what you had already done, and we've had that presentation, you know, how you did the initial first responders, but really the next piece about how you can potentially take it out to the community and what the likelihood is of that. And there's some training that's going on today.
Right. Well, we had training today, and I apologize. I can't seem to find it in my email, but we did have training today with our CARES team, because we have probably anywhere from 200 to 400 active CARES clients that are not ambulatory and not able to utilize transportation, public transportation, to go to the healthcare clinic for their vaccination, even though they fit. So we're making contact with those I call them clients, but they're really partners in the community, with those community members, to schedule times when we'll once we get the green light from the health district and receive our vaccine, we'll be able to deliver those vaccines to the people that are not ambulatory in their home. Bigger picture than that, once we have enough vaccine again, is the ability to open up our doors in our fire stations in a strategic manner to hit vulnerable populations and areas that may not have the mobility to go to a large vaccination clinic. And those are all discussions, and the briefing paper breaks it down by band, essentially, and probability of success. And again, like you mentioned, it all hinges on our availability of vaccine.
Councilmember Love, does that suffice, or do you need more information? You're on mute.
Wrong screen. And Chief Schaefer, I just sent you your own briefing paper in case you want to discuss the pop-up clinics. But if you haven't seen what he's outlined there, as there's more available, we could potentially have pop-ups at our fire stations.
Right. Okay.
Thank you for sharing that with me. For some reason, I've got too many of my own pop-ups that are open on different screens. But yeah, that is, I mean, our fire stations are strategically located in neighborhoods. It was based initially on response time, but it's also our connection, the city connection to the people that live there. So if we have an opportunity and we're able to leverage connectivity with the public, we're certainly going to do that.
Questions from council? Righty. Chief Schaefer, thank you. Appreciate that. The next item is mine, and it has to do with replacement of handguns, and I'm not sure who from PD is going to talk about. I just need a paragraph of what happens to the weapons that are no longer viable, available. Where do they go, and who does what to them? So, who is going to be briefing? Major McNabb. Thank you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay. So we have $49,000 per year to spend on guns through the value blanket. We didn't spend very much of our budget last year. We only spent 43%, mostly due to budget shortages having to do with COVID. So this year we've had to make up for some purchases, which has left us with $2,600 on the value blanket. And it's pretty early in the year, and we anticipate doing new hires, later in the fall, where that will probably more than eat up that amount there. So what we'd like to do is increase the value blanket by $15,000. As far as the trade-ins, we trade in our old guns that are worn out or are no longer usable by our department to the same facility that we buy them from. They are a wholesaler that works exclusively with law enforcement and other fully licensed retailers in the area. So that's what happens to those when we're done with them.
Thank you. And my reason for asking, just so the rest of the council knows, I was really hesitant when I thought this through, the logical conclusion was if those guns end up back out on the street, killing an officer or being used in the commission of a crime, then we need to look at something else and another method of disposing of them. So that was my reason for asking, is just a little bit of angst on my part about what happens to these guns after the police are no longer able or to use them. Councilmember Stratton.
Make sure I understand this. So the guns, when the police are done with them, they go back to the company that sold them, correct? And then are they destroyed?
Yes, Councilwoman. When we're done with them, we trade them in for credit. We get a small credit on them, and that's used for the purchase of the new ones, towards the purchase of the new ones.
So does the company then destroy those handguns, or are those destroyed, I guess is my question.
No, they're not destroyed. They're either sold to another licensed retailer or sold to another law enforcement personnel.
Okay, so it stays within that law enforcement?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Burke, did you have something? Okay. Any other council members want to comment, ask questions? All right. Thank you, Major McNabb. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up is SPD mental health position. Council President, you have the next two, the mental health position and then the fleet vehicle leases. So go ahead and do those up.
On the mental health position, I don't know that we need any further presentation than the briefing paper. Just wanted to support that we're continuing to explore non-traditional ways of responding to mental health crises that aren't violent. And this looks like it's going to give us some good cost control over using our frontier behavioral health people who are co-deployed. So that was good. My only concern, and I don't know if there's someone on the line that can answer, is we're paying for it out of the public safety levy that the council put on the ballot and the voters approved, which is great. But I see that there's a proposal to reduce one of the public records positions. And since we have quite a bit of extra money in that levy that continues to accrue because we haven't been able to come close to hiring new officer positions, I'm just wondering if we can do both for the foreseeable future.
Council President, if I could address that, this is Major Olson. So if we're able to add that staff inside the levy position without having to cut that record specialist, that would be ideal, if that answers your question. It's just within the confines of what we are allotted, we just had to prioritize, and we see the value that we're getting from this position to be so high that it just took precedence over the other position. So, but if there is room to expand the hiring capacity out of that, we would definitely do that, because the record specialists are still behind, and we're still trying to find a way to fill that gap.
Yeah. So when the voters passed that levy, they didn't make any distinction between how many positions or which departments or anything like that. It was a broad. I mean, it was narrow in the sense that it had to be personnel for public safety or crime reduction, but it had to be. But it didn't come down to specific positions, and so I personally would support keeping the extra records position, because I know your department is way behind on that. And frankly, if you need more for the time being, that money is just accumulating there for public safety purposes like that. And at some point in time, once you get through the backlog of retirements and recruiting and doing all of that, then we might have to make a choice. But then we should be in a position for it to come out of the general fund by then. Hopefully we'll be on the road to recovery. So certainly for just me, I can't speak for the rest of council, but they could weigh in. I think you should, do both, because we're not going to get close to hiring the commissioned officers for a while, I don't believe.
I appreciate that, and I will move forward with this, and then I'll see what steps we have to go through to bring that record specialist back in as well. So thank you.
Anyone else have a question about this? Go ahead, Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, I'll just say from my perspective, I question whether a record specialist meets the intent of the levy. I mean, we're supposed to be hiring public safety officers, whether it's fire, police, or funding crime reduction. And while the position's needed, no doubt, I mean, we need to do better on records, but I just question whether it fits what I think the intent of the public was when they voted for that public safety levy.
I can give you the memo that Chief Lytle gave me as to what that all was going to pay for. And there are public records people in that. So I can get Jacoby to ferret that out and get that to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I was just
anybody else? Go ahead, Council President.
I was just going to add that City Council did pass a resolution that at least for the first year of the levy spending that we would be spending it on record specialists. So the public did know that was our plan. But again, that plan wasn't permanent. We have flexibility on that legally, but we did tell the public we were going to do that. So,
anybody else? Alrighty. I know we're going to talk about fleet. I see David Payne is queued up. Do you want to go ahead?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Council President, council members. If I understand correctly, the request was to give you an update on leasing and why we're leasing and what we're leasing. Is that correct, Council President?
I'll narrow it for you a little bit. Since we first saw this on the consent, I think we wanted to make sure that there wasn't an electrical alternative, which we agree there isn't. But I have another question, and it may be beyond you for today, so if it's not, but I just kind of wanted to raise this because if I understand the white paper, we aren't replacing trucks that we already have, but it sounds like that we've switched in the last few months, perhaps a policy on the administration side to replace vehicles where people are using their personal vehicles and be paid mileage for it. We're seeking to have a city-owned vehicle instead. And that's kind of a big policy issue. It's a kind of a large amount of money. And I'm just hoping that maybe we could have, before we go down that road of making those financial commitments, which are pretty significant, we could go through what the cutoff is. How much does it cost per month for the lease versus how much was it costing in mileage? What are the HR kind of policy implications, liability, there are some things like that, but I think we need to have that discussion with council before we start purchasing vehicles that we've never had before, but are changing that. So that's my concern I'll just throw out there.
Okay. I can address part of that. The vehicles that are on this briefing paper are for the Engineering Services Department, and if I understand Kyle correctly, these are not replacing anything. These are vehicles that they've needed. They hired, I think, 1 or 2 new people, so these are actual additions to their fleet. The reason we're going the lease option with the F-150s is because that in 2023, Ford is projecting they will have the F-150 electric vehicle available to us. Right now, the only one that's out there that's viable is the Rivian, and it's at $69,000 right now. Ford is projecting that their 2023 F-150 EV will be somewhere around the $70,000 range for a base price. We don't have a lot of data on the Rivian because it's too new. So the fleet suggested to engineering department that we lease these vehicles. So, and maybe just to expand a little bit, and I'm going to keep it at 5 minutes, Councilwoman. When we entered into this pilot program in 2018 with Parks, it was with 5 F-150 pickup trucks that we leased. That's being expanded this year. They cut it off short at 2 years because the resale on F-150 trucks is through the roof. So Parks is going to turn those 5 in, get 5 new ones, and they're anticipating a $10,000 worth of money coming back per truck on those trucks for us that will be applied for the replacement lease costs on those vehicles. They're also expanding and adding another 17 vehicles to their lease. Some of them are showing up now. The 5 Konas for parking enforcement are going to replace the Go4s, and the RAV4 hybrids are the ones that I believe that you may be speaking to as far as replacing personally owned vehicles. Chris Becker has, I think, 10 people in her Building and Planning Services Department that have been using their own vehicles for a number of years, and they've been paid a stipend. Chris did the evaluation and determined that it was in the best interest of the city to lease these vehicles for those people rather than continue to pay them for their personal owned vehicles. I think there were multiple implications that she was looking at. The fact that you have a building and planning and code services person pulling up into someone's yard in a personal vehicle, and now they're going to have something in a city vehicle with a logo on it identifying them. So it was not just a financial decision, it was a decision for appearances as well and safety, not only for our people, but for the homeowners as well. I don't know, did that help?
I think the Ford 150s for the engineering are replacing vehicles that were used personally, according to the white paper, but I think those employees retired. So it's, what I feel like we need to see in the white papers, and it's easy after the fact to say we want to see it. I don't think there's any fault in the white paper, but we need to see what that cost is per vehicle for the monthly stipend versus the lease cost, and then any other factors like you just mentioned of maybe you want a City of Spokane emblem on it. And then also, does that position really need a truck or not? I don't know, but it would be helpful to know, that this is the specification for that position. I think the for code enforcement. One of them was the graffiti painter person, remover, and they had a bunch of stuff and they needed a Tahoe, I think. So that kind of made sense. But we need that information in order to make a decision on it. But again, I don't think anyone from council told you that ahead of time, but that's just the feedback when I look at it now. And I also know that you have served us very well in this interim position, and there's someone else that's going to be their problem who we're going to talk about tonight. But I really appreciate all the times we've had to meet and talk with you. And frankly, this might be the last time you report to us. So I just want to thank you for your service.
Thank you very much for your kind words. But don't forget, I'm going back to waste energy, so
Okay.
you're still going to see me.
Okay. All
That's
right.
it.
All right.
So, Councilmember Stratton, go ahead.
I just want to clarify. So these leases, they're year leases, right? We can
Yeah,
something different in a year, right?
Yeah, so the way the program is when we do the contracts with them, it says 36 months on them, but after the 13th month, we can terminate the lease at any point in time.
Okay.
And that's what really makes it more of a viable option across the board, especially when we're looking at, changing to biodiesel, changing to electric vehicles. As the EV and biodiesel market continues to grow and evolve, we can drop these at any point and switch to the other vehicle.
That's what I remember. So thank you for clarifying that.
And Council President, I will get the answers to your questions.
All right. Thanks.
And again,
Any other questions for David before he go ahead, Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, can you just talk a little bit about what's included in the lease? Is that all maintenance, everything, or is that just the price of obtaining the vehicle?
Sure, that's a great question. So we have the option with Enterprise. We can either defer and pay an additional stipend on top of the monthly lease, and then they'll take then the actual driver of the vehicle can take it to Jiffy Lube or wherever you want to take it at. We at Fleet believe that that's not the correct way to do it. So and I'll use the Parks Department as an example. Because the vehicles see less than 7,000 miles a year, in the 2 years that Parks has had those 5 vehicles, we've only seen those vehicles twice because they don't hit the maintenance marks in time, and it'll probably be the same with most of these others. They'll never get to the point where they need brakes. They'll never get to the point where they need major work whatsoever. So Fleet wants to protect the city's interest and to protect ourselves. We have said that we want to see them at least once a year, which is typically where the annual oil changes come into play. We can do the safety walk around and make sure that there's no safety issues identified, but it's a minimal cost at best.
But those costs aren't included in the lease prices that we were given, correct?
No, sir.
So my question then it would be, do you know why just an average consumer, I can go on and look and find an option for under 300, under 250, and yet the price that we're being quoted is about 500 for each of these. And I'm just kind of curious the discrepancy, if you have any thoughts there.
So I can use, what's the one that we were just talking about? One of the main reasons we go with Enterprise versus a local dealer even, and we reached out to the local dealers again in the last 30 days to discuss lease options. Under the Enterprise program, they give us kind of a guarantee, well, not kind of, they give us a guarantee return at the end. So if you go down and lease a car from Gus Johnson Ford or whoever the local dealer is, when you turn that vehicle in, the dealership gets the residual money made off of that vehicle when they sell it. With the Enterprise, the leasing department gets that money back, and they get it back, and they can apply it to the lease, or they can apply it. So the Parks Department, the initial 5 vehicles, they're anticipating getting $10,000 above residual value back on every one of those vehicles. That will, in theory, and again, it's a pilot, so we're trying to test. This is going to be the true test. In theory, that's going to make the next 15 to 17 months lease payments on the replacement vehicle. If we go locally, we don't get that benefit.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. That it?
Is this it? Okay. David, don't go. I just want to give you a big thank you for all the work you've done. And I know you're not going away. We'll still see you, but just a big thank you because the job you've done is not an easy job, and especially with all of us firing questions at you. But we appreciate your time and your diligence. So thank you.
Well, thank you all. It's been a pleasure being here, and Miss Wallace has told me that I'm not going back anytime soon. She's got some other things she wants me to take care of. So
there you go.
Thank you very much.
Kind of like the Hotel California. You can check out, but you can't leave.
That's it.
All right. The last thing on the agenda was mine, but I got my answer already, so I'm going to say never mind. And is there anything else by council that you wish to expound upon or have questions about? Councilmember Mumm?
I had sent you a text, you maybe hadn't seen it, about the pedestrian bike. It was in the consent. That ILA.
And so,
if you want to send me an email follow-up, I was just kind of curious as to what the money was, or what the agreement and that person would actually be doing on the education. So,
we probably don't have anybody here to answer that. So I will follow up with you. Yes, absolutely.
Great. Thanks.
Okay. Our next meeting is May 3rd. Hard to believe, and perhaps most of us will be vaccinated by then. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. So thank you all, and we'll see you at 3:30, and we are adjourned.